All right, friends, welcome back to another episode of Healedish. So today I have Jade with me, which, oh my gosh, hi Jade.
Hello.
It has been forever. I ran into you at Target, which we're not going to anymore, but ran into you at Target a while back, a couple years ago, and we went to middle school together.
So long ago, I'm like, why is that like deep in the archives of my brain? I'm like, man, I remember sitting in history class with you.
Really? Oh my gosh, I'm like, I don't know. I don't remember the exact class. What I do remember, this is kind of funny lore. Maybe it's not funny. Maybe it's sad. But I was so bullied in middle school. It was horrible. Yeah. I had this afro, and this guy used to throw food in my afro during computer class.
So
it was
rude.
So rude, so horrible. And I made this friend who was your friend during math class, and you guys were kind of like the popular crew. No, do you remember this?
No, I do not.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I made friend. Her name's Marissa. She's awesome, and I made friends with her during math class, and she kind of like took me under her wing. She taught me how to do my hair, and then she invited me to sit at y'all's table, and that was like a life-changing moment for 8th grade year-old Juby.
No,
so
I feel that, and it's just so cool to like see your evolution. I think from middle school we all go on our individual paths, but just to like see you doing your thing, and like it makes my heart happy because I remember some of those times in middle school that I'm sure were tough. Teenage emotions, teenagers being teenagers. So it's really awesome to be here, really awesome to see you doing your thing, and it's amazing what you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I wanted to have you on because I've followed your life throughout the years on Facebook, although I don't go on Facebook much anymore. And I saw that you did a crazy story time with your ex on TikTok. And I don't even know how many parts it was, but I watched all of them. I binged them. And then when I started this podcast, I was like, I need to reach out to Jade and have her on the podcast.
Yes. Yeah, I think it was like 26 parts. I mean, it was insane. Just all that unfolded in such a short period of time. And I think that's one thing about my story that stands out is that, you know, this 7-year relationship, you know, you think where you're pretty foundationally solid, taking 7 days from like having a really healthy, vibrant relationship to like we're no contact and we never speak again and I never see you again. So
it's hard to even imagine that that's real life because 7 years of being with someone, you would think you would know every part of them. You would think. So do you want to take us back, who we are going to call her Morgan? Do you want to take us back into how you guys met? How did y'all's relationship start?
Yeah, so Morgan and I met in college. And so I was a college athlete, volleyball player, and Morgan was a basketball player. And met at kind of a time when I was in my athletic career where I really just wanted to feel seen, heard, and understood. And so I had met somebody at the time that made me feel all of those things kind of as I was transitioning out of a relationship. And we just kind of hit it off. And it was kind of one of those college things where you start hanging out and you just don't stop. And it kind of progressed into this full-blown relationship as we began to learn more about each other and see there are some points where we connected over our past and experiences that we had. And so from there, I kind of went into the relationship saying, you know, as soon as I graduate college, I am going back home to Texas, and this will not be a thing. So there's a deadline to this. There's an expiry.
Where were y'all going to college at the time?
Out in Tennessee. So now it's called University of Tennessee Southern, but it used to be called Martin Methodist College out in Pulaski, Tennessee, middle of nowhere.
Was it a religious college?
It was. It was a Methodist college.
No way.
Yeah, so I got the scholarship after my brain surgery. So I don't know how like deep in the archives we went into my Facebook, but I had brain surgery.
Yeah, what happened there? I do remember seeing posts for a time about that.
Yeah, so I was at a Division I and I dove for a ball incorrectly and I hit my head on the floor instead of my arm catching my dive. And so because of that, I had an undiagnosed concussion that ended up needing 4 brain surgeries. I was overdosed on pain medication and had a stroke and had to like learn how to walk again. And so part of my transition into Tennessee was the fact that my Division I school would not take me back after my injury. And so
Wow.
coming into my time at Tennessee, and we talk about wanting to feel seen, heard, understood, you're coming from this really catastrophic life event that really changed how you view yourself, because I had to shave my head. I mean, I had staples in my head. I had to relearn my body and my relationship with my body, to now just wanting somebody to see all that I've been through and understand what that meant in the context of my life. And at the time when I met Morgan, it was like, wow, I've been through this really horrible thing and somebody sees me. And that was really important for me at the time.
Yeah. And being at a religious school, were people supportive of y'all's relationship, or was it things like people didn't really care about it?
It's so funny because Pulaski, Tennessee is I had never been to Pulaski, Tennessee, by the way, before. And apparently, I didn't know this when I got recruited, it was where the KKK was founded. And so
Oh my
things you don't really
God.
know until you go. And you're like, oh, this is great. But honestly, truly, Pulaski was such a great college town. I think that besides a lot of the stigmas of this place, the people were really great. And the campus was actually fairly accepting, I think, because of their athlete population. There were limited sports programs, and so we really didn't face any type of homophobia or any type of like religious trauma due to our relationship on campus, which was really nice because you could kind of exist in peace in this bubble of your university. So I never felt unsafe there, which was,
Yeah.
or in the town in general. So that was a good experience.
And I have heard Methodist, that what's it called, denomination, which I'm sure there's somebody out there screaming, no, it's bad. But I mean, I have heard that denomination is more accepting than what I was raised in.
Yeah, I found
Like
that.
it's kind of a mix.
Yeah, it was really, because I think I went in expecting that it was going to be like, you're wrong and you can't come here and you're terrible. And I actually had quite the opposite, where like everybody was like, we're fine, you're good. We love you, and, we don't have to agree, but you're here on our campus, you're part of our family. And that was kind of my experience in the context of my relationship in that type of religious university.
Man, yeah, people are always asking me, they're like, tell the positive stories. You're not, so I'm like, here you go, guys.
Here's
I'm
one.
giving
I'm the poster child for positive experiences at
Jade
religious
doesn't
institutions.
exist.
Right. This is not paid for a sponsored ad. No.
Come to our university. No.
Right.
So how long were you guys together? I know you were saying like afterward you were going to come back to Texas, but how long were you together before graduation was happening?
So before graduation, we were together for about, I would want to say a year and a half, maybe
Yeah.
a year. And it was great. I think and I tell people about my relationship and they're like, you're insane that you can look back on all these experiences and still smile and laugh about these memories. The memories don't change. The context in which it ended was horrible, but I still look back on these memories and I'm like, wow, this was a chapter of my life that was beautiful at a point. But the relationship lasted for about a year and a half, and we did a lot. We saw a lot. We tried to get out and experience things as much as we could. And it was just part of my youth that I just, you grow up with somebody in a sense. And so those were like really great chapters when I was in college, because your environment's a little condensed. And so you're in this bubble for all intended purposes where you just have kind of like raw time to spend with somebody. And it's like you never want to leave the bubble. So it was good.
Especially when you're in school, it's like all you're doing is school and hanging out and activities, and it's like a pressure cooker of getting to know someone very quickly.
Very quickly. And in relationships, I think lesbian relationships move quickly as the stigma, they call it U-hauling. Like, so we were already on a fast track. And then so add this pressure cooker of being in college, and we're both athletes and we're running into each other in the gym and you're interacting with each other all day. And you're like, okay, yeah, this kind of checks out.
Yeah. So what were you thinking at that point? Were you thinking that your relationship was going to last past that when you were going to move back to Texas?
So initially, no. I think I was really committed to this idea that when I graduate, I'm going back to Texas. I'm going to go to PA school. I'm going to do that whole thing. And this will be a blip in my life.
Interesting.
And I ended up moving. We got just super close, and we ended up moving into an apartment in Pulaski. So I left the dorms on campus. Both of us left the dorms on campus and moved into our own apartment. And I was like, wow, okay, we're having a really great time together. I don't want to stop doing this. So by the time I graduated, we were kind of like in a full-blown relationship. And we were like, okay, let's figure out what this means post-graduation. And I got into grad school out in Alabama. And so we packed up together and moved to Alabama for grad school. Then got a job in Texas. And I was like, okay, like, do you want to do this and keep doing this? And so I ended up proposing before we went to Texas so that I could show her family how serious I was, because I felt as though if I was taking Morgan from Tennessee or her home, the South, and saying, hey, come to my home state where you will be integrated close to my family and kind of put into my world, I need to show your family at the time and where they were that I was serious and that I was committed, and that this is something that I saw some longevity with, or a person I saw some longevity with. So
you think that that's what really drove you proposing, was this idea of we need to prove that our relationship is very serious with intention and that there's a reason that we're moving to Texas?
I think so. At the time, yeah, it was, I need to show people, her family specifically, because I believe there were, and again, I don't want to speak for anybody because this is like kind of my own perspective of things, but I felt as though I needed to prove that I was serious. To have her make a move like this, knowing that 9 times out of 10, when you are moving for somebody, 9 times out of 10, you don't have your own stuff lined up 100%. And there's a bit of a learning curve and an adjustment that happens when you move for somebody to get reacclimated to a new state, a new environment, a new family. And if it's your first time doing something like that, I felt like you kind of have to show a level of commitment and seriousness so that our relationship was taken seriously versus, hey, this is some fling. So that's kind of was the driving factor for me at that time.
So how long were you guys together at that point? Because you said you were in Tennessee and then you went to Alabama and then to Texas.
So by the time we got to Texas, I want to say we were probably about 2.5 to 3 years, 2.5 years in, I would say. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was the proposal like?
It was awesome. I thought it was awesome.
You're like, well, I planned it, and it was amazing.
A great time. No, it was really sweet. So I proposed in Tennessee at the Parthenon, and out in Nashville, and it was like a surprise type of photo shoot deal, and had pictures of it all, and then we went to a restaurant afterwards, and all of her family her dad's side of the family. Was at the restaurant to surprise us with like a little party. And so it was really nice for the family members that did show up to support. They kind of knew me and had built relationships with me. So they were invested to a degree. They knew we were moving. And so this was kind of our last hurrah as we celebrated kind of transitioning into this new chapter. So it was really nice. I think at that time we were, again, young, in love, and like us against the world.
We're going to make it work.
We're going to do anything we need to because our love is strong enough and we can make it. And there's a level of just, there was a need to prove everything. Prove it to our families, prove it to ourselves that this is serious. And in order to show how serious we are, we need to do these things in order to kind of validate.
Yeah, like we're a real couple, real. And you should take us seriously.
Yeah.
What did your family think when you proposed?
So I think my family always has had this kind of, I feel like if I could explain who I am or in my family's eyes, I've always kind of been kind of that wild card where they're kind of just like, hey, Jade does what Jade does, and like we're going to hop on the bandwagon and we may not agree, but like if this is what you want, we're going to pioneer behind you. I think there was still a bunch of learning that they had to do about Morgan at the time.
Yeah.
But
had they met?
They had. So they met when I graduated college, and that was actually really great. I think, again, it was a little apprehension on both sides because Morgan knew what I told her about my family, and my family knew what I told them about Morgan, right? And
Yeah.
so everybody kind of has like, I'm the middleman in this situation and I control the narrative, right?
Yes.
And so my family was super accepting. I think at that point, again, hadn't spent enough time with Morgan and I to kind of really sift out the dynamic of our relationship. But my family was like, if this is what you want, and y'all are moving to Texas, and this person's going to be part of our family now by proxy or by way of you, they're part of our family now. And so they were super open. They were like, yeah, sure, girl, go ahead, do your big
That's
one.
awesome.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
great. It was great.
I was going to ask you because I remember this from Facebook days
Okay.
is weren't you guys gifted a wedding?
We were.
Okay, because I'm like, in my mind, I have like the timeline of Jade's life. And I'm like, okay, so I remember when you had your surgery, I remember the wedding, and then I also remember there was something else that happened, but I remember something else. Anyway, yeah.
I'm sure. I'm like, it never ends over here. Yeah, we were gifted a wedding, and so we had this really big wedding that we were planning in Nashville. And it was really exciting. And I think at the time, right, again, being somebody that had never been married before at that point, you have this idea of what this day is supposed to look like. And I was also the girl who at a very young age was watching Bridezilla's Say Yes to the Dress, 4 weddings. I mean,
I was about to say 4 weddings.
goodness, I mean, that was all that I consumed, right? So when it came
Yeah.
time to this moment, I was like, oh, this is my shot. All these repressed memories started coming to the forefront. And I said, you know what? We're going to go all out. And so we found this beautiful, beautiful venue out in Nashville. And again, you're in your early 20s. You don't know where this money's coming from, but you're just kind of going off of a wish and a dream. And you're like, this is going to happen. I know it's going to happen.
Were you thinking that your family was going to help pay? Because I feel like it's something, I mean, I guess people do talk about it more. I see it on TikTok now, but there is this idea when you get engaged that it's just going to happen. You're
Oh,
just
yeah.
going to randomly find $20,000 to
Yeah.
get married.
And you also have no true concept of how much this actually costs. And so you're looking at like, okay, yeah, $5,000 for a venue. Sure. Palatable. A lot, but palatable. Then you're like, okay, food budget, 5,000 minimum. Okay. Palatable, but we're getting close. So we start adding things up. I think it gets crazy, but I also thought I was going to have a lot more help from both sides of the family. We did have a lot of help. But in the span of us planning this big wedding in Nashville, my grandfather passed away. And my grandfather was supposed to be the officiant of our wedding. And I was the first granddaughter. And so it was really significant to me to have him officiate this wedding because he really loved Morgan and he really loved all the things that we were doing and the adventures we were having together. And so when my grandfather passed away, and this was also the first death that I've experienced in my family. And he was kind of the anchor to everything, this really big presence. And so during in the middle of planning, I was like, whoa. And I think at the time I was already having some like doubts about things. And so for me, I was like, oh, this is a sign. This is a sign that something shouldn't be happening. But I kind of was like, okay, instead of putting the engagement on hold and just waiting until I kind of found my bearings with the passing of my grandfather, I just kind of pulled the plug on the actual venue or wedding. And I was just like, let's just wait with planning. I was like, I don't think I'm in the headspace to continue planning this wedding because I believe we were about 7 or 8 months out from the wedding from the time we booked the venue. And so I was at work one day talking to a coworker, and my coworker and I are scrolling on Instagram, and we see this advertisement for a free elopement. And I'm like, wow, this looks really cool. And I'm like, I never win anything, so like, why not? Let me just apply. And literally I got contacted, and they were like, hey, you and your, at the time, your fiance, y'all are engaged. We heard your story. You submitted. Like, let's do it. You're the winner. And we went to Top of the Rock out of New York City and had an elopement. And we got pictures paid for. Our hotel was paid for through a membership club that I had with, I think, the Marriott or the Hyatt. It was a absolute dream.
Wow.
Absolutely.
And the pictures were gorgeous. And I mean, if I had gotten an email saying, you won, congratulations, I'd be like, this is fake.
Girl.
I mean, because who wins these things? You always see them, people sharing giveaways to Airbnbs and stuff like that. And I'm like, who's winning this?
Who's
Because
winning this
I
and
never
how?
win them.
Is this rigged? Is this a
Yeah.
joke? But no, it was real, and it was one of the best experiences of my life in terms of getting eloped, and the fact that I knew that if my grandfather was here, he would have been, it was so on brand and he would have loved it. And if he had his way, he would have been like, absolutely, I ship this 100%. And so
Yeah.
it was kind of like an ode to him, I think, winning it, and kind of, I believe, his gift to me at the time to just be like, here's this experience where you have some really great memories to look back on, once in a lifetime opportunity. And it was such an amazing time and experience, I think, to be able to have that moment with just us, and the officiants and the wedding coordinators who were helping us kind of navigate the whole day. And it was
Yeah.
awesome.
That's awesome. You were saying that leading up to the wedding, you were starting to feel like doubts to where you thought that it was
It
a
was just
sign. So, what doubts were you feeling leading up to it?
So I am a huge believer that sometimes our intuition tells us things that our mind does not want to accept. And
Yeah.
here's my kind of premise. We're always taking in information, visual, nonverbal, like we're always receiving data. And whether we want to look and analyze that data, completely up to
Yeah.
you. And I think at the time, I was at a period in my life where I was experiencing a lot of changes, but I also, I I was struggling listening to my intuition and had a lot of doubts about whether this was my person. I was struggling in my career, and also personally was at a point where I didn't understand how, you know, I had invested money into my degree and I had invested time into my career, but my partner, who did not have a college degree and did not have all the things that I worked hard for, was making more money than me. And so my self-esteem issues were being drawn out by that. And I was making these subconscious jabs at my partner. And I think that there was a point of our dynamic that shifted where I said some not so great things and was not a great person. But I think through the midst of that, some red flags were revealed, some really deep-rooted family issues that kind of were started in college kind of started rearing their head. And I really kind of had a moment where I struggled with anxiety. And it was to the point where I was like, okay, I'm either anxious or depressed, and I would wake up and my chest was pounding all the time. And I thought that was just my normal state. And
Yeah.
then you start to go through, I think, when you get in a cycle of experiences, this anxiety and depression or whatever you're feeling, and then you start noticing your searches on your phone start changing, and you're putting in Google Reels discreetly, like relationship trauma. What does this mean? Relationship anxiety. What's that? Why am I always feeling triggered around this person? And it's not in a bad way, but I was really trying to just dissect, like, what am I feeling and why? I love this person, but why am I feeling this way every single time I'm around them? And it's not that the person was bad, but it was like, but I do notice physically something's happening.
Yeah.
And so there was a period where I think I was really just questioning, is this the right relationship? Is this the right person? Am I fully attracted to this person, or am I in this relationship because I feel like I've invested so much time? People are invested in our story. People are invested in this elopement. People are invested in who we are as a couple, to where I feel like I have to see this through now, versus listening to my body clearly giving me the indications and the signs of, hey, something's not right. We need to pump the brakes, get to the middle of it or get to the core of it to see if this is a relationship that is meant for you, and if this is the person that you're supposed to be with, or was this somebody that you were supposed to experience a season with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's so hard because I think that once you've invested so much time, it's really hard to pull the plug and backtrack, especially if there's not an event that happens that
Oh,
is
yeah.
very specific where you're like, okay, this is why I should be getting out of this relationship.
Oh,
And
yeah.
like, I know for me and my ex, my body, my intuition was telling me to not marry him the entire time leading up to the wedding. I ended up developing fibromyalgia during the engagement. And what's so crazy is he had not been abusive to me at that point, but my body, like something in me
Oh, yeah.
knew absolutely not, do not do this. But at that point you do feel like you have so many supporters. Like you have these family members who've showed up at your engagement celebration and your grandpa loved her. So it's like you have
Meant
all
to
of these
be. I
things.
have to see it through.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was for me, where it was just like there was a commitment to almost the narrative, right? Not
The
necessarily.
story.
Yeah, and we paint and we create these grandiose stories, and it's just like we have to finish this. We have to see it through, and then you start to think maybe it's a one-off fluke with me. Maybe I just need to get on anxiety medication. Maybe I need to see a therapist. And I did a lot of those things, and I was constantly on a search of trying to fix myself because in my mind I was saying I want to be with this person. So now we have to figure out and diagnose what's physically going on with me because mentally I know I want to be with this person. So there's no question about that.
Yeah.
It was a constant cycle of convincing myself that my head was wrong, or that my head was right. I want to be with this person, and that something was wrong with me physically, that I was like, that wasn't gelling. And I'm in this period of radical accountability where a lot of the issues that I experienced at the end of my relationship were due to a failure to acknowledge the red flags and some of the intuition that I experienced early on. And had I been in a place, and I'm also layering in grace, right? Because when you're young, a lot of times it's like, you know better, you do better. And this is after years of therapy and years of really working on myself. But sometimes you just don't know any better. And the fear of making the decision outweighs kind of like the comfortability of you staying, right? It was so much scarier, the thought of being without this person that I have, for all intended purposes, grown up with and experienced some things with. And I was like, I don't know who I am without you. And then again, now at 31, looking back, that's not a good thing, to not know who you would be and how you would move past your life, move through your life without this person, and layers of codependency and all of that. And so again, it's like, you know better, you do better. But had I paid attention to what was happening earlier, it would have prevented, I think, this canon event that led to the demise of our relationship.
Yeah. So were you feeling anxiety after the elopement? Were these things that you were actively thinking after you guys got married?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was during, I think it was like after. I remember kind of like periods of feeling underwhelmed, and I was like, is this it? Like, we did this thing, and it was still really beautiful, but I think, we make marriage and elopement out to be like this thing where it was like, finally everything falls into place and my life is perfect. And I remember kind of like, okay, this is it. Like, we're locked in. Now there's life after this. What do we want to do? Now I have a commitment to this person's family. And I think at the time, Morgan's family, I think the night before the wedding or the elopement, Morgan's mother texted her and saying, like, I hope you know you're making a mistake.
Oh my
And of
God.
course, you're about to marry this person. And so there was a level of disclosure that Morgan had with me where we kind of talked about things, and it was really hard making space for Morgan to express what she was feeling with her family, but then also, making sure that I'm kind of like not going on a downward spiral because of the family stuff, because that was a really difficult time for us dealing with the family stuff.
Was it because you were a woman, or was it because of you? Okay.
It was that, and and I'm sure we'll touch on this too, but I mean, from the minute that our relationship started, I was accused of being a witch and into witchcraft.
Stop. No, this is such a thing. I feel like people who are not in these circles don't understand how much that
Very niche.
phrase, no, such a specific type of trauma. And it's like everything is witchcraft. Yoga is witchcraft. Like, God forbid if you like a crystal, which I'm not super into crystals or anything, but I can't tell you how many times I've heard, well, you're automatically a witch or you practice Wiccan or whatever. So why did they think that?
I knew that I was a Scorpio, and I think maybe like I had said something about that, and again, I was like in this period coming out of my brain surgery where I was just like trying to figure out who I was. And I think when you're in those periods of trying to figure out who you are, you deep dive into whatever you can to bring you some resolve. And so I was like, okay, what does my horoscope say for today? Where am I headed? What am I feeling? How can I be more in tune with some of these things that I feel like I'm connected to at the time to just help me get some clarity on what's happening with me in relation to my life and my path and my journey. And so I think some of that was part of what it was. I think,
Horoscopes?
yeah, it was a whole thing. I was like, you do your daily forecast for the day, and it's like, you're a Scorpio, and Mercury's in retrograde, so this is what you're going to be experiencing, and da-da-da-da-da. And I mean, it was like the whole thing. And then I also think being the first woman that Morgan had publicly brought to her in front of her family saying, I am in a relationship with this person. And if Morgan's family isn't used to that, they're going to think that I am the one that converted Morgan to this lifestyle versus Morgan choosing this for herself. And so I think that was a big part of it as well. And I mean, I was told I had a dark spirit and that they were spiritually in tune with this spiritual world. And, again, I cannot discredit anybody's experiences with the spiritual world. Whatever your experience is, I cannot determine that or say that.
Yeah, I will say I do not believe you have a dark spirit. I think, do you know if they were Pentecostal? Because this sounds very...
I don't think so.
It sounds similar to Bethel, where spirits and everything, spiritual warfare. So
that was a thing.
Yeah, this is an attack on our family, I'm sure.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And I think what's hard too, I love that you touched on it because it's honestly so true. I've heard this so many times where the person who they're in a relationship with gets blamed for you've converted them to this lifestyle as if it's you. You're the whole problem and that this would never have happened had you not entered the picture. And it's like, that's not true.
Very far from the truth. And I think the thing is sometimes I think in situations like this where somebody comes out in your family, we fail to see the person for who they really are versus who we want them to be very early on. I think people kind of exhibit signs and behaviors that indicate certain things, even if they don't say it. And it's up to, the families and parents to ask the questions, to see the person versus assume or even just make past judgment about who we think they are based off of who we want them to be. And so definitely didn't convert Morgan by any means of the imagination.
Yeah.
It was very like this was, we were both complicit in this relationship and both were on the same page about what we wanted and what we felt and we're both committed. But it was difficult getting her family to kind of see that this is something that she wanted and nobody was forcing her hand and that, I wasn't a witch. But I think it was very interesting because in the very early stages of our relationship, Morgan had also said that I had, dark energy and dark spirit and that I was a witch or that I participated in witchcraft. And so Morgan believed those things about me too. And at the time, I was like, again, I don't know who I am without this person, so I can look past it. And it's okay if you think that about me, because maybe as my partner, and at the time she was my girlfriend, maybe as my girlfriend, you are able to see traits in me that I am not able to see in myself because I am not able to always witness my behavior. I'm exercising my sense of self, right? But sometimes our partners show and highlight things in ourselves that we may not be able to see, and I trusted that. And so, yeah, there was a level of like, well, maybe. And I think I trusted in her spiritual intuition because there were times where her intuition was spot on, right? And I was like, yeah, no, I trust you, and you always lead us in the right direction based off your intuition, so sure. So when it came down to me, I was like, your intuition isn't wrong any other time, so why would it be wrong about me and my spirit and me being a witch and all these things that I enjoy that make me who I am? Maybe those are wrong things and I'm not as good as you, or I'm not as religious as you, or spiritually in tuned as you are. And so I took those as direct reflections of my character and who I was as a person at that time.
But you knew you weren't practicing witchcraft.
Correct.
Yeah. I think like It made me want to tear up. It's really sad because I feel like if I was in a relationship with somebody who's consistently telling me that I have dark energy, like how does that not change your view of yourself? Um,
Well, so the funny thing is that these events and these kind of like statements occurred sporadically. And I say that it maybe happened once a year. And so if these things where this person is telling me you're a witch, you have dark energy, dark spirit, dark soul, are happening once a year, once y'all kind of settle the dust or kind of, what is it, agree to disagree,
yeah.
and things go back to normal for a little bit, you don't think about it because other than that, everything is great. And
Yeah.
so you just kind of wait until next year, something happens where you're accused of these things. And then it's like, okay, well, it only happens once a year. So, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, is it really that unbearable to go through a week or two of a little discomfort, a little bit of questioning, a little anxiety, a little bit of not so great times for this other part of my relationship where, you know, the remaining 49 weeks of the year are great and we're building memories and we're doing stuff and we love each other and we're building. And for me, those 2 weeks of condemnation, I'll say, were worth it. And so again, just like things that I'm like, self-worth, right? And this codependency and anxious attachment to where I felt like I had to stay no matter what because I wasn't going to be able to find anybody like this. I was never going to be able to achieve this type of connection with another person who I felt saw me in this way because again, even though she may have seen part of me to be dark-spirited, it was also kind of a contrast where it was like, but yeah, there's so many other great parts of you, but you sometimes tap into this dark side. But like, this is not all that you are. Like, you're still great, but you just got to
Yeah.
stop doing that stuff. And I'm like, doing what? I don't know. And
Yeah,
so,
I also tap into a dark side when I'm hangry, and that doesn't mean I have a dark spirit. I think like we could say that about, I mean, so many people I would have said so many people, all people in relationships have bad days where they're not their best self, and
yeah,
that's just a fact. And I think like going back to what you were saying on, it felt like the 2 weeks that you suffer, it's kind of worth it to stay married because the rest of it feels pretty good. That's really how I felt with my ex too, which is kind of a dangerous way to view it in hindsight because at the time I was like, well, we're having fun. We're going to Disney. I really like being a background actor. I don't want to blow up my life. And yeah, he did this really abusive thing. But
yeah.
then he stopped and we had a good 2 months. It was a solid 2 months. And am I
Good enough.
willing? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's enough to stay for now.
yeah.
But yeah, so how did you guys end up in California? Because I know that you guys went and moved out there.
Yes. So California happened because during the pandemic, my background's in clinical laboratory, and they were looking for lab supervisors to help kind of run this lab funded by the state in California. And so I was at a period in my career where I was looking for some change and looking for an opportunity and a foot in the door. Interviewed a couple of times, and they were like, "How soon can you be out in California?" And I was kind of apprehensive about taking the opportunity because, again, I felt like we were in a safe spot. My partner had a good job and was kind of, I felt like we were getting settled in Texas, but again, my partner did not want to be there. She didn't want to be in Texas, and I think for her, California was kind of a fresh start in a new environment that she wanted to be in or thought she wanted to be in. And for me, California was a way to propel my career. So I kind of felt like it was best of both worlds for both of us. Again, if I had to kind of give my perspective on it. And so I had 2 weeks to pack up our life. We drove out to California and set up shop.
Oh my gosh. So
Yeah.
how long did you guys live there before we get to the 7 days? Because that's coming up.
We lived in California for 3.5 years.
Oh, wow. So you guys were out there for a long time.
Yeah, I thought it was home. I mean, at the time that
Yeah.
everything, or maybe like a little bit before the time that everything kind of happened, I mean, we were in conversations about doing a vow renewal and buying a house and starting a family. Those were the types of conversations that were occurring because I think, and again, for me, my perspective, I felt as though California was home and I had always been in a place where I wanted stability. And I think it's so funny sometimes going into a relationship, one person wants one thing and the other person wants another thing. And the whole objective is to kind of get on the same page. But if you want two different things, you're constantly going to be pulling the rope in different directions, creating tension. And so that's kind of where we were, and the point that I was like, I want to settle down. I've hit my career goals. I have a great job. I just want stability, and I want to be in a state, in a city that I can call home. I don't want to move anymore. We've moved a lot since we were in college, and I just want to be in one place. And so that's kind of where I was at the point before everything kind of like falling apart, was just, hey, we did all the things. Like, we can check the box. And now looking back, maybe that was more self motivated, right? And I was the one pioneering all of these changes and these goals without pulse checking to see, like, is this what my partner actually wanted, or is this what I wanted? And I was the driver of all these things. And so it's just really interesting looking back, some of the insights you get when you look back and analyze and reanalyze to see where were the gaps. So very
Yeah.
interesting.
What do you think she wanted?
I think during that time, if I had to speak for her, I would say that she wanted to be free and travel and have some freedom, and the same freedoms that I had and privileges and opportunities that I had to build my career and to explore my creativity. um, I think that that's kind of the type of freedom. Sometimes we think when our partners say they want freedom, we think it means like relational freedom
Yeah.
to cheat and have different relationships. And a lot of times I'm learning now that freedom is more mentally, spiritually, emotionally, the space to figure out who you are. And a lot of times the only way to figure out who you are is to experience things. And so we were traveling a lot, and I said, okay, this is bringing Morgan a lot of joy, so let's keep doing it. But again, it was like these self-imposed things that I was trying to put and maneuver into her life and her path because it's what I thought that she wanted.
Yeah.
And so yeah, just like I was trying to help. I think it was all with good intention, but I think she just wanted freedom. And sometimes I think looking back, I was trying to help in a way that maybe wasn't welcomed all the time. Which, again, accepting responsibility, sometimes we think we can kind of play God and help get people on their way and like, here you go, like, and maybe that just wasn't my place to do. So it's just interesting things I've learned along the way, reflecting on the situation. But I think that's what she wanted, was just freedom to figure out who she was in relation to all these things that we were experiencing, as I wanted a family, and I'm expecting you to fill this role as a parent. And you're like, wait, hold on, who am I? I haven't maybe done all the things that I want to do without having to now shift my focus to raising another human and fulfilling the role of a wife. And that's my life now until, so.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So what led up to the 7 days?
Girl.
I'm like, this gets into the
Right,
TikTok
so we're
series.
in the weeds now.
Thankfully, I listened to it so long ago that I actually don't remember
Perfect.
most of it. I just remember the arching, what the heck is happening right now?
So it was after my 30th birthday, and my 30th birthday was November 2nd, 2023, and we went to Colombia, and it was a great trip. I mean, it was just amazing looking back on that trip. And again, I came off of my 30th birthday like, this is really good, and this is like, I'm ushering in this new chapter. I've been through a lot, and I finally feel like I have arrived. And so we get back home to California, and we were supposed to go to see Morgan's family. And I had already committed to doing a pop-up. I owned a business out in California, so I was already had booked and committed to doing this event in California. And Morgan wanted me to go to Tennessee with her. And I was like, I really want to go, but I have to stay. I wanted to honor the commitment because these were people that I knew. I was like, if I didn't know you, I would be like, okay, hey, I don't think I can do this. But I had built a relationship with these people that I was doing an event for. So I said, I have to stay. Like, you please go. Have fun. Have a ball. I'm going to do this pop-up. And, everything is going to be fine. So my sister, and typically Morgan would help me do my pop-ups for my business because they took so much time to prepare for. So my little sister flew out from Texas to California to help me do the pop-up in Morgan's absence. And so the whole time I'm communicating with Morgan, we're talking, I'm showing her all the prep and literally on the phone with her every single point at which she's gone in Tennessee with her family, but also just making an effort to say, hey, if you want to be with your family, you do not have to text me all the time. Like, I'm here, I'm good, enjoy your time. And so Morgan came back to LA and everything was great. There was a 2-week period where I was like, wow, like, this is amazing. I had won a grant for my business. I was like, wow, like, again, things are just moving in an upward trajectory. And I'm like, life is great. 30s is going to be awesome.
Oh my gosh.
And one day I remember this day like it was yesterday. It was a beautiful, beautiful sunny day. And we had gone and purchased a generator for my business. We had gone and got coffee, like typical slow Sunday morning. And Morgan kind of gets this like mood just instantly shifts after she receives a phone call from a family member. And I noticed like I had gone into Target, I came back into the car and I was like, hey, like, everything okay? Like,
yeah.
Things were great. We had a great day. And just whole demeanor like shifted. And so Morgan was like, no, I'm okay. I'm good. And I was like, okay.
Ooh, that would give me so much anxiety.
Oh my goodness. And so again, I'm like, and so the trend, and like I was telling you, once a year, these events of the witchcraft accusations and, you're messing with me spiritually type of accusations would pop up yearly. And so the prior year we had experienced something like that, which was like a huge blowout, almost resulted in our divorce because we just like couldn't get on the same page about anything. And
messing with her spiritually.
yes.
So she actually thought that you were doing witchcraft to mess with her.
I think so, and not in the sense of like the gimmicky type of witchcraft, but like saying things that prevented her growth. So for example, I'll just give you a quick overview. There was a point in time where Morgan worked at the same company that I did, or the same company, different department. And, we were having a conversation about who we considered each other to be, like who was the alpha of the relationship.
Yeah.
And I'm working a 12-hour shift. I'm on like day 3 of 4. I'm a supervisor of 50 people. And so you kind of say something like super quick, super short. And I was just like, oh, I consider you kind of like beta. Like, I don't consider you alpha, which probably was not the best thing to say, right? Because that's kind of a jerk thing to say. But that quick interaction and that quick comment that I made that I didn't really put a lot of weight onto, again, if I could interpret this from Morgan's perspective, was kind of like a jab of, this is all you think I'm capable of being. This is where how you've classified me, and this is what you think of me. And so in the sense of spiritually messing with her in terms of limiting what she could be, from my perspective, I guess you could say, if I had to like shape shift my brain to understand any of this.
Yeah.
There are points I wouldn't go as far to say witchcraft, but I could see how the comments were kind of like, why would you say that? So yeah, there were arguments where it was just like, this is like, you're spiritually keeping me down. You're spiritually messing with me, and whatever you're doing, you need to stop. And again, I think sometimes I didn't take into consideration maybe how hurtful the things that I was saying. And I think there's a way to communicate hurt.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
There's a way to communicate and say, hey, I don't like what you said. Let's unpack it, versus saying you have a dark spirit, you have dark energy, you're spiritually messing with me, and being very ambiguous and vague about it so that the other person can change the behavior so that they don't do that again. It's just kind of putting up red tape around your boundaries.
Because I could see how that comment, like, despite the fact that that's not necessarily how you meant it, or it was just a quick thing that you said, I could see how that would feel hurtful if you're feeling like, oh, are you saying that I'm less than? Then that really hurts me. But obviously, there's a difference between a disagreement and you guys having healthy communication and saying, hey, this really hurt me, and then you taking the time to acknowledge her pain and you guys coming to a resolution, rather than you're doing witchcraft against me or you're spiritually manipulating me.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
what happened after the phone call? So the
after
phone call, mood shifted.
We went home, and I'm just like, Morgan steps out of the apartment, and like, I'm like, where are you? Like, what is going on? Like, we were having a great day. And so Morgan, I see her outside of the apartment. She's sitting down on a curb on the phone, like kind of crying. And I go outside and I'm like, hey, are you okay? Like, you're saying you're fine. You are not fine. Let's talk. And Morgan then proceeds to tell me that she's cutting off one of her close friends that lived in California. We lived 2 minutes down the road from them, and we were part of a friend group. So it was two couples, me and Morgan, and then the other couple, and we were friends the entire time pretty much that we were in California. We hung out a lot. Morgan hung out one-on-one with one of the girls from the couple, and so that was like their friendship. And so to hear that Morgan was cutting that person off was kind of a shocker, especially with no context. And again, I was like, what happened that like this is coming up now? There must have been something that led up to this. So please enlighten me. Like, what happened?
Because it affects you too. Like, I'm trying to think. I have a couple friend, and I'm like, if Bran told me he was no longer going to talk to that person, I'm like, okay, well, this affects all of us, you know, and I would want to know why.
Exactly. Because again, it's not so much that you want to cut the person off, but I think sometimes it comes with a little bit of added context. And I think some conversations are needed so that we're not leading with, hey, yeah, we are just cutting you off. And it leaves kind of other people wondering, like, what happened too. So we're all kind of like in this gray area because of a failure to communicate. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I don't think we need to associate with people. We don't want to be friends. The baseline for me was the communication. And so when Morgan could not identify the cause of cutting this person off and couldn't tell me anything, and was basically kind of deducing it down to like, spiritually, this person does not want us together, and this person has bad intentions. This person's energy is bad. I don't want that around me. Like, something has shifted with this person. And I just remember being so confused and just wanting context. And so it wasn't even that I don't want to say didn't believe, but like, I was going to listen to my partner, but you weren't giving me the context to support me supporting you, if that makes sense.
Well, I'd be like, what exactly changed, and what do you mean they're not supportive of us? I would feel like there's some conversations going on behind the scenes that I'm not
like privy to. Like, I was like, what is happening? And again, I was friends with the other girl, and typically how couples kind of break off into friendships with other couples. And so I was like, we were super close. And so I was like, so like, how do we navigate this? I just didn't know, right? But then I wasn't really given any answers. So it was really hard for me to make a decision and like champion behind you because you weren't really telling me anything. Mm-hmm. And so over, the next couple of days, it was just like, what's going on? And it was like a chiseling away at somebody who I felt was committed to not communicating effectively what was going on internally. And so I was just kind of digging for more answers. And mind you, throughout this whole time, I did not unfollow any of the girls on Instagram. I didn't really do anything because, again, I hadn't really received any information.
Yeah. I would be waiting to get more context. And also, I'm just thinking right now, I don't understand why this happened right after the phone call with Morgan's family. So maybe we'll get into that. I don't know. But
this day, I will let you know. There's no spoilers. I still have no clue. And I will probably never know what happened during that conversation that changed everything. We'll never know.
And you're for sure that it was someone from Morgan's family?
I am 1,000% sure.
So weird. Okay, let's keep going.
Yeah. So over the course of the days, again, I was just kind of seeking answers. I was like, what happened? And Morgan felt at the time that my lack of kind of just supporting this initiative wholeheartedly to cut these people off meant that I was complicit in some way. And I said, the way that you're acting about this whole situation is very reminiscent of when you would accuse me of witchcraft and dark energy and this kind of not communicating about what's going on and just cutting people off. Like this feels, I told her, I said, it feels familiar. And so when I'm having these visceral, like anxiety type of reactions, it's because this feels familiar to how my nervous system feels when you bring this up and you accuse me of this and you say these things about me and kind of condemn me in the way that you're kind of doing to this friend group. And so my lack of kind of like supporting her and where she was and not cutting these friends off and kind of leaving it at that meant that I was in some way complicit. And so she was like, well, you're acting really guilty. Like, do you have something to be guilty about? And I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, wait, how did this become about me?
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, what? For supporting and I don't want to even say supporting, but just like pushing to find more information and almost in a way like justifying cutting off the friendship. Because if you're friends with people who you do consider family, I do feel like there does need to be a level of justification, right? Because I've also, as somebody who used to treat people as being disposable and cutting people off the minute that something happened, I've grown past that and now know people are not disposable. And as much as we like to think that people are not owed explanations for the hurt that's caused, sometimes like you do. And it's borderline communication and it's respect. You don't have to be friends with everybody, but I do feel like you do owe people a baseline respect to say, hey, this isn't kind of working out for both of us. Let's just go ahead and end the relationship. I appreciate the time we've spent together, but it's just not for me.
Yeah, and it's not even that you were saying that you were unwilling to cut off these friends. You were just saying, I need to know the information so that I can back this decision. That's all you wanted at that point.
Because I think, and here's the thing, I think as a wife, I was going to support my partner, but there were so many gray areas. And again, and that feeling of this is very reminiscent to how things happen with us, where you accuse me of things and not having not feeling like I got answers in those arguments. And then going to this situation where it almost felt like I was blindly being asked to cut off this relationship. And then I'm left with the question of why. So I'm supporting you, but I'm still just like, if I knew why, I would be okay. And I wasn't really getting an answer.
And at what point is that not controlling? I think back to my marriage and I think, okay, what if Ted had told me, I need you to not be friends with our friends here in Atlanta? Yeah. I mean, he could have done that because I had opened up to one of them about a bad fight that we had and I ended up going to her house in the middle of the night due to something that he did. And if we view it from that perspective of, well, if it's not okay for him to tell me you have to cut off your friends, how is that any different? Because there's no explanation.
There's no explanation.
Yeah.
And again, I would have supported had I known and had some context. I did not receive that.
Yeah.
And so a couple days go by, and again, we're having this argument and we're kind of going back and forth. And, Morgan is just like, I went out with this friend the other day for lunch, actually. And the reason why I am feeling like this, and it was kind of revealed to me spiritually that this person was a part of this dark energy and bad energy that's brought around. But they also told me that, so Morgan was helping me with my business and doing pop-ups over the weekend. And so, and I don't know if this is wrong or right? I was kind of started this business and was kind of winging it, but I wasn't paying Morgan. You were just kind of helping me, right?
Well, you're a married couple. I mean, Brand helps me do things all the time. So
which I was like, okay, it wasn't to me, again, at the time, if you're saying you're willing and I'm asking and pulse checking with you, again, from what I can remember, I was doing that. Yeah. There was always an element of free will, I guess, to a degree. I'm like, if you really were like, hey, I didn't want to do this, I wouldn't have asked you. But I guess the friend had brought up in conversation of is Jade paying you to help her? If not, she should be. And so I don't know if that for Morgan, like, kind of took that the wrong way, as like they're trying to cause a divide in between this relationship.
Oh, okay.
And then Morgan then said that the dark energy and manipulation was that the friend actually had a thing for me and was trying to split me and Morgan apart because the friend had feelings for me. And so in my head, I'm like, okay. Like, I still didn't understand it because, again, like, the couple had been together 4 years. I mean, I was like solid in my relationship with Morgan. I was like, look, we've been together for 7 years. Like, we're locked in. Like, we're in this. We've invested time. Our families are invested. I'm invested. I love you. Like, people are going to be interested in both of us, at varying times. People are going to think we're attractive. Like, we're not acting on any of it. So I don't really see the big deal. And so it ended up coming out that that's what it was that was causing this reaction. And so
And did Morgan know that, or this is like another thing that Morgan is kind of like divining?
If I could develop my own conclusion and come to my own conclusion, it was like these things were being revealed to Morgan over time on her
In the
own,
spiritual
in this
realm.
spiritual
Okay, got it.
realm. And so I was like, okay, I mean, sure. And I was just like, if, they're kind of like dead to you, then cool. And so a couple of days go by, maybe like 1 or 2 days go by, and Morgan realizes that I don't unfriend the friend on Instagram. And like all hell breaks loose. And that is when I am accused of cheating on Morgan with the friend. And I was like, wait, what? Like, this is crazy. Like, this is legitimately crazy.
Yeah.
And it was the weekend that Morgan was in Nashville with her family. And mind you, in between the trip that Morgan took to Nashville to the time that I am now, like, being accused of all of this, Thanksgiving had gone by. And so we had like a Friendsgiving at our house. And so the couple that I'm being accused of cheating on her with was there. And I mean, we were all taking pictures together. If you thought I cheated on you during the period that you were away at Nashville, which was before Thanksgiving, then like, why did you even allow them to come into our apartment and to participate in this holiday with us? If you kind of thought that. And so.
And this is just another thing that's being revealed. There's no proof or there's no reason why Morgan believes that you guys were cheating with each other. Yeah.
And so this was, again, around the time I had my pop-up for my business. And so, again, I'm like, I was so busy.
Your sister was in town.
My sister was in town. And so I guess the whole thing came out that, like, your sister loves you enough to where she would lie for you. And I was like, I can pull security camera footage from the apartments. I can subpoena phone records. I don't know how I was going to do all this. But
you were willing, because you're like, I know that I didn't do anything.
I didn't do anything. I was willing to do whatever I had to do to prove to Morgan that I did not do this, because I know I didn't do it. And Morgan said that the only way that she would be able to believe that I didn't do this is if she could travel back in time. She said I was so manipulative and deceptive that even if I did subpoena the phone records and the security camera footage, that I would have manipulated those and changed it to fit my narrative. And that she couldn't trust anything that I provided because I was just that manipulative and deceptive. And I wanted the relationship so badly that I was willing to do anything, meaning lie, cheat, deceive, to keep her. And again, themes of the dark energy, dark spiritual stuff about me kind of came up, about, everything we kind of experienced in our past kind of like reared its ugly head during this whole process. And I think understandably so, after almost a week of kind of like going at it, I was still going to work. I was exhausted. And so of course you kind of have this moment where you kind of explode and you're like, you kind of put me through this whole week of being very elusive to finally we're getting to the cause, like, you think I cheated on you.
Yeah.
And it was terrible because it felt like a week of just emotional hell, if I could like put
Well,
it
yeah, those
into
those fights, those horrible marital fights that I had with Ted, I mean, they will rip you apart. And I cannot imagine going through just a week of that, especially where you're fighting, but you didn't even really know what you're fighting about. Like you're still confused. You don't understand what's going on. And I feel like I would lose my mind if I was saying, let me pull security footage. I will give you every single piece of evidence. Let's get everybody into the room. Everybody can tell you
oh,
where they were
yeah.
and saying that no amount of proof ever could change my mind. That's just like another level of
It was crazy.
unreality.
It was wild to experience because I think even, bringing the couple in, because again, I'm at this point, I think for me, knowing where I was in my marriage, where I was willing to do anything to kind of save it because this was my person, right? Like,
Yeah.
and then we're coming off this high of celebrating my birthday and her birthday's coming up and I'm just like, wait, what's happening? Holiday time. And so I'm like, what is happening? And I was kind of just back was against the wall. I was willing to do anything. And so we got the couple in and I was like, guys, can y'all please just tell her like this did not happen at all. And it was
Yeah.
actually the weekend that she accused me of doing all of this was actually their anniversary. So they were together doing something that entire weekend. And I was like, they're telling you that they were together. like
And
they
why would the other person lie about it?
Yeah. And then it came out that my ex was like, well, maybe y'all are into some weird polyamory thing. And I was like, I've never mentioned like anything like that. And I was also
Yeah.
just like, this is at this point, like you're kind of pulling things out of a hat to try to make it stick. And it was just crazy. And I asked at certain points, I was like, what proof do you have? Because you're coming with some really big claims. And I would think that to end a marriage, that there would need to be substantial proof to justify you wanting to leave this if you're making an accusation like this. And I was like, where's your proof? And she said her intuition was her proof. And so it was a really difficult time, I think, when somebody, and again, you can never tell anybody what they're experiencing, right? I liken it to somebody that's experiencing like bipolar or mania, right? I can't convince you that that's not reality or your reality is not yours, and I will never do that. But I didn't understand what she was experiencing, and I think there was a communication barrier to what she was able to communicate about what she was experiencing so that I could understand it and provide support at that point. I had offered therapy, but then I think at the same time, she was also like, if we go see a therapist, you're going to choose the therapist and they're going to be on your side and no one will understand my side. And I was like, you can choose. like, I'm not above critiquing how I show up in this relationship and how
Yeah.
that contributes to your experiences with me. I think relationships are two imperfect people coming together to just figure it out. And so I'll never say that I operated 100% right in my relationship. No one does.
Yeah, no one does. And I mean, you're willing to go to therapy. And I feel like the fact that she didn't want to go to therapy, even if it was somebody that she picked,
Yeah.
to me, it's like, that your case, you don't have a case, or you wouldn't be able to convince anybody of this because there's no proof. It's not true. So it's just not even worth going.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also just her spiritual experiences feeling very real to her. And I think sometimes when people are kind of in that frame of mind, there's no amount of convincing or logic that can battle against it. And, it was like being told that I operate in a very logical sense and in the tangible world, and she kind of moves in this spiritual world. And so there were barriers that came with that, where I was looking for tangible proof that she had that proved that I was cheating on her, and she was looking for spiritual intuition types of proof. So it was just really difficult to get on the same page about what our individual experiences were in relation to solving the problem and getting to the core. Over, a couple of days, it ended up kind of like I just felt like I was at my wit's end. I had gone to see a therapist. I was like, if you're not willing to see a therapist, like, I'm going to go to therapy. Immediately, the therapist was like, this is projection. This is
Wow.
classic projection.
See, I was thinking that, and I remember when you did this series on TikTok, so many people were saying that they thought that it was projection.
Projection. And in any sense of the way, right? I had a lot of people, I think, on the TikTok series, like, who identified, like, she's projecting and, oh, she
Yeah.
did the cheating. And it eventually had come out, in like a 3 a.m. confessional, as they always do, that, she was interacting with somebody during her time in Nashville, I think. And I will never
Oh,
say,
I did not remember that.
oh, yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. And
wow.
it wasn't I cheated, it was I am interacting with somebody. So the words were chosen very carefully. And I will never say that she cheated because I don't know and I don't have any proof. And the minute that I
Yeah.
say you cheated on me, I am then following the same path of accusing somebody of doing something that I have no proof that it happened, to be honest. Is it implied? Absolutely.
You're being so fair because I feel
Yeah.
like I'd be like, I am 99%. Because
Girl.
she's pretty much admitting, I think saying the words I'm interacting with somebody is so vague on purpose.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you're even bringing it up, you know that you're doing something wrong.
Because I think the guilt eats at you, right? I think
Yeah.
even to where you're not able to sleep, and if you're somebody that can typically has a fairly structured, regimented sleep pattern, and you're up at 3 in the morning, something's you're the guilt, something that you've done is not allowing you to settle down. And so I think from the moment that she kind of said that she was interacting with somebody, you know, I was like, I have nothing to say. We've had all the conversations. We've been doing this for a week. I am exhausted. You have let me know where you are and kind of showed me that you kind of put me through this week. And we really could have just started off the week with, hey, I'm interacting with somebody. I think I want to pursue this. Maybe we need to not be in a relationship. And as difficult as that would have been for me to process and make sense of, it would have cut out all of this in between of fighting, arguing. I mean, moments where I kind of got to my wit's end and I said, hey, I think we should just pull the plug. And to see my partner on the top of our balcony cheering as if you just saw a game-winning home run, cheering on the phone with her family. The trauma, I think, that
After you said you wanted a divorce, she's on the roof cheering.
she's like on the top of we had 2-story lofts on the top floor, like cheering, like, yeah, I'm free, like summertime, yeah, this is
Had
not
you
meant to be.
noticed any of well, I mean, I know we know that she had been saying that you had dark energy and stuff before, but this feels like such a departure from the person that you knew.
I think it was, and I think that was part of it was just like I didn't recognize this person. And I think that was the most difficult part of this is, again, I think we reflecting back at the beginning of our conversation, it's like I'm talking about these amazing experiences that we had, and it's overshadowed at times by this really dark chapter that we've had. Because I didn't recognize this person, and I didn't know that this person had the capacity to, I think, behave in this way or communicate in this way with someone that you had built a relationship with, that you had claimed to love. But I also think that people who go through things like this are emotionally struggling in some way. And I never think people's outbursts are just random, right? I feel like sometimes that's a lazy thought process. A lot of times it's triggered by things and feelings and emotions that we cannot break down and interpret and process. And it's almost like children, when children have these outbursts and we're like, okay, there has to be something that's wrong with you when we have to figure it out. It's the same thing with adults. We all have these triggering situations and events that cause us to react emotionally in different ways. That doesn't make it right, but you are and do have a commitment to healing yourself so that you can prevent the outbursts or at least know how to communicate past them, especially when other people are involved. And so it was a tough time feeling discarded. Again, me kind of like being at the prime and feeling like we were kind of like at this great point in our relationship, and then it's like, one day things were great and one day they weren't. And now I was dealing with this person who I had no clue who they were. They were treating me differently than I have ever been treated by them, to this degree at least.
Yeah.
And now I'm sitting here like trying to navigate divorce papers and ending our lease, and then our apartment's a mess, and I'm very much an environment type of person, and it was like chaotic, and we were like, I just remember that point in my life, and it was just like everything around me was like chaos and noise. And I was still going to work.
So were y'all still living together
We
for
were-
a little bit after
Oh.
you said that you wanted the divorce?
Oh, this all happened in the 1 week. We're on day 6.
Oh my gosh.
This is day 6.
Wow.
And so we had lived together this whole time, and throughout that week, we were still living together. There were nights that I would sleep on the couch and she would sleep in the bed, but there was no period where there was like an official separation. It was like we're having an argument that has escalated to the point where we immediately need a divorce.
Did you feel, you don't have to go too far into anything, but like, did you feel safe being there with her? Because I feel like one thing that I keep thinking is I feel like there's two things that are going on. So, we're probably never going to get closure and know what the heck was going on with Morgan. But I'm like, there's this one end where I'm like, this is all caused by projection. And I think that she cheated and she's doing this projection to you and like gaslighting you.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, I'm feeling, and I want to be gentle because it's sad, but I feel like there's this spiritual kind of psychosis thing that could potentially be going on because it feels very similar to, I've had experiences from people from Bethel who have said that they've heard things from God and they left their children and their families to go live on the road, and they said that God gave them a mission, and people who have like these very extreme breaks with reality. So when you're saying that Morgan was like, no amount of anything could prove that this didn't happen, I know because I have this intuition, it feels like that break from reality that I'm kind of familiar with in these very spiritual sectors. So did you feel safe being there at the time? Because it feels like her behavior, cheering on the roof, it's like kind of unhinged.
Yeah, I think I felt safe up until a point. I think when I stopped talking and I kind of said, hey, you're interacting with somebody, there's nothing left to say. That's when things kind of took a turn. And there was an event that happened where I was just like, I've never experienced anything like this, and I need to go now. And I think when you experience things where your intuition is saying, okay, you don't need to sit here and wait this out any longer. And again, the intuition I should have listened to in the beginning of my relationship. That same feeling I felt then, it's a deep knowing. And the question is, are you willing to answer the call? And at the time when that happened, that was a clear indication that I was dealing with somebody at that point that had nothing to lose and was willing to do whatever they felt like they had to do to get the point across, to communicate past this point. And I had a lot to lose. I had my career. I had my livelihood. Everything. I felt like I had everything to lose. And for me, there was no relationship that was worth me risking everything I had worked so hard to build in my life. It's not even just my relationship or the apartment, right? We're talking about foundational life things, character things, your self-worth. And so I, left my apartment in the middle of the night, after kind of this big blowout argument, went to a friend's house, booked a flight to San Antonio, packed up every single item I could in a medium-sized suitcase from my apartment and fled home and never went back. We haven't spoken since. I had met up with the couple before I left because, when I left my apartment at 3 a.m., I didn't get to shower. I was in pajamas. I got out with, one shoe. It was really crazy. And
that's so scary.
It was scary. I think, again, it's sometimes, again, you get the call to, gotta go.
Now is the time.
This is the time. And so I listened, and thank God I was willing to listen. But, I met up with the couple and I was just like, hey, I want to apologize on behalf of, my partner, all of this stuff that's happening. I am sorry that this is happening because in no way, shape, or form was I had no clue all this was going
Yeah.
on. There was no way I could have predicted this. And y'all are collateral to this situation, this marital issue that we're experiencing. Whatever was going on with my partner, they were collateral damage in all of this. And so they allowed me to, before my flight, so I had to go buy clothes, and like I went to Target, I bought clothes, I bought undergarment, like I had to just get clean and get my life together and freshen up before my flight. And so I went to their house and I just sat down and like broke down. Of course, I'm like, I've been crying for a week at this point. So I'm like, the tears were there, but went to them and apologized. Because I was just like, I don't know what's happening. And this version of this person was such a stark contrast from the person that everybody knew. And I was having to explain what was happening and I didn't even know. But then also trying to make sure that like I am not tearing everything down also because my partner had decided that they wanted to tear it all down. Yeah. And so it's like, I understand if y'all don't want to be friends with me anymore as I kind of navigate this, like we are going to proceed with the divorce. Like I am divorcing this person because once you kind of cross a certain line, I think when people cross a line, you show how far you're willing to go in any situation. And once you let me know that you're willing to cross that line and go past that point, I had a decision to make. And thankfully I was strong enough at that point in time, despite everything that had happened, to choose myself and to choose the path unknown. It was very scary. This is not something, as an oldest daughter who has had parents that have been married for 26 years, there was so much pride I think I had in staying married and weathering the storm no matter what. Because my mom always says divorce is for her and my stepdad, divorce was never an option. And I felt like I had to follow that trajectory in terms of legacy. Right.
Yeah, and I think so many of us are told that divorce, like I remember, and it worked for my grandma. She had a great marriage, so it's hard. I think that some pieces of advice work for some people, but I remember I used to ask her, like, what's your one piece of marriage advice? And she was like, divorce is just never an option. Like, we never even thought about it. But they were never put to that point or never had violence in their relationship, so that doesn't factor in when you get to abuse and also just like extreme neglect that some people experience as well. Yeah. So it's hard when you have this ride or die kind of mentality of we are going to weather the storm no matter what, and then it feels like that is ripped away from you, that you have no choice but to flee in the middle of the night at 3 a.m.
Yeah, and it was a difficult choice, right? Because I think as the oldest, you're looked up to as the example. Yeah. I thought I had failed. I felt like I had this scarlet letter on me and that, I was on the trajectory to do everything perfectly. I had the perfect job. I had the perfect apartment in Los Angeles. I was living my best life. I was traveling. I was doing all the things. I had the perfect marriage, Yeah. And it's like you hit this plateau and you're like, all of it's being kind of ripped away. So much of my identity was wrapped up in also kind of like weathering the storm and being resilient, right? And then it comes down to this one event. And I'm like, maybe I'm not as resilient as I thought because I wasn't able to withstand and endure this chapter in my marriage. It's also difficult discerning whether these are just typical marital issues or are these foundational issues that tear me down. This other person is feeling torn down and we're staying in this because of this commitment to not quit.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think for me, it was just developing a level of discernment to say, no, these don't feel like typical marital issues. And even if they were, when it comes down to whether it's getting physical or even verbal abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, neglect, all of those things factor into, this is not typical. And if you're feeling like this, you have some decisions to make. Yep. And a lot of thinking to do about, is this the type of quality relationship, the quality of relationship that you want? Do you feel like this is what you're worth? And I think at that time I was like, no.
Yeah.
And so I'm proud of myself. I think I think before I used to deduce my worth and my level of resilience down to, okay, well, you left and you're a quitter. And no matter what, and I don't think like, I think in the beginning phases I did, and I came home and I was like, wow, I'm a failure. And I had to leave LA, and I was chased out of LA, and I wasn't really chased. I made a decision to put myself first and to put myself in a safe environment. That's first and foremost. And me leaving was more to recalibrate this abrupt change that happened in my life that I did not foresee coming, but unfortunately had to adapt to fairly quickly. Sometimes we don't have the time to adjust and get comfy. That's a luxury. But a lot of times we are forced to adapt and adjust very quickly to the things that happen in our life. And that's just kind of the position I was in at that point.
Yeah. So what was it like when you first came back, and how did you start to heal and rebuild?
So when I first came back, it was really difficult because I was, I've always felt kind of like I never wanted to be in San Antonio. I was very happy with my life in LA. I had my
Yeah.
friends, I had my job. Like I had a very vibrant life in LA and thought that LA was home. I was like ready to lock LA in. I was like, yep, this is it. And so coming back didn't feel fair. I think I struggled with a lot of feelings of, again, not receiving the closure I felt like I deserved because, again, after I got on that flight, we have not spoken since.
Which is crazy, and it's similar with me and Ted. Like I literally never saw him again when I boarded that plane, and there was like a bit of text messages before I made the decision. But it is crazy to be with somebody for so long, and then it's like, what's that Taylor Swift song? Valiant roar, what a bland goodbye. It's just like,
Girl.
what a bland and strange goodbye of just like no contact out of nowhere.
Literally, there have been no text messages. There has been nothing. Nothing. The minute I boarded that flight, that was the minute I left my apartment before my flight, that was the last I've seen and heard of this person.
Did you get your stuff?
No. Everything that I've had in that suitcase was how I had to start my life over.
Oh my God.
Everything in my apartment either got thrown away or handled by Morgan in the aftermath. She ended up staying a little bit longer to clear all of her stuff out, and I don't know where she went after all of that happened. Have no clue. Didn't follow up to check.
Good for you, though.
The apartment called me because I was the primary leaseholder. They called me to let me know I had, final move-out charges. I paid it and kind of like went about my business.
Yeah.
I didn't have time to perseverate on the ending, and I really had, and again, I adapt very quickly to, we don't have time to sit here and mull over this. Like, it happened. We got to heal, and we got to figure out why you stayed so long. What's happening? I went inward to answer your question. To heal, I had to go inward, and I think a lot of times, we distract ourselves with all these things to really stop from looking inward because it's difficult. It's hard to address the trauma. It's hard to adjust to look within and address like childhood wounds and flawed ways of thinking and operating, things that we do to make life a little bit more palatable. And sometimes that comes at the cost of like distracting us from healing and working on ourselves and seeing the not so great parts of who we are. And so the first thing I did is I got a therapist. That was the first thing. Oh my goodness. And my therapist has been amazing. I've had the same therapist for about 1.5 years, and we have been working. And I think one of the difficult things to process with all of this is not only did Morgan's family Morgan kind of discard me, her family did.
Yeah.
And that was really difficult because as somebody who, had really deep, anxious attachment, I couldn't palate the fact that I thought I held this place in people's lives, and I thought these people cared about me, and I thought these people loved me, and everything that I was giving was so real emotionally. Like, I think that's probably the part that hurts the most out of all of this. Like, I think I can like piece together everything else, but I think just being discarded by people when you give your all to these relationships and you really do deeply care about the family members, and you're invested in the siblings' lives and the grandmother's lives and the aunts and the uncles, and you think you mean something to people. And it's events like these where you're discarded that show that maybe it was a one-way street, because nobody checked up, nobody called. I was discarded at the same time along with everybody else that Morgan did. And out of the whole situation, I feel like the discard was the most difficult part to process.
Yeah. No, I feel like that's something that people don't talk about as much, is how much it hurts to lose your in-laws or just the family, you know, because losing Ted's in-laws was so, so sad. And I follow this one content creator, and her name is Cora Lakey, and she loved her mother-in-law. Like, her mother-in-law, she thought that they were so close, and she's currently going through a divorce, and she's constantly just processing in real time what she's going through. And her mother-in-law served her divorce papers, and like has not talked to her anymore. And she's like, that has actually been like one of the most painful parts, is feeling like I loved my mother-in-law, and then she was so heartless to serve me the divorce papers, and just like losing this family that you thought was your family, and you realize it's not unconditional love, it's conditional as long as I'm with your son. You know, so that's really hard.
It was unexpected, because again, I think there was a level or part of me that was like, no, they care about me. They're going to get the full story. I don't know what Morgan told them about how we ended. I don't know if she was as vague with them as she was with me, right? But I think it's very clear that they received part of a story that did not tell the most accurate version of the truth, or both sides of the story, to determine what they considered to be the truth. I'm not sure, but all I know is what I kind of went through and experienced, and that was, I felt really discarded, and I felt like it was a very childlike experience, where it was like you are trying to get people to see you and hear you, and like you're crying out for help. If I could like go back and like equate this feeling to something, I just felt like it was like, please listen to me. I didn't do this. And that was kind of what that whole period encapsulated, was like, I just wanted people to know that I didn't do this, and that it's like, my character. Why would I do that? So for a long time, I started questioning my character and how people viewed me. And it was just a really tough part of my life where I was questioning who I was, because this situation painted me out to be so different from what I know myself to be, or who I know myself to be. And dealing with feelings of being discarded by people who I really opened up to. And it's really difficult for me to open up to people and be vulnerable and really expose myself to people. And so I felt like I had done that over the 7 years that I was with my ex and being with her family, and they had seen me through various chapters in my life. And so to just be kind of thrown away without saying, hey, we know this didn't work out, we love you, we are here to support you in any way we can. Obviously, Morgan is our priority, in whatever way, shape, or form that needs to be. But we want to make sure you're okay as well. And if this is it, then this is it. I think even that for me would have provided a little bit more closure, so that I would have said, okay, we can make peace. But not hearing anything, not getting an explanation to this day, was difficult. I look back, I've moved past it, I've grown past it, I've healed, and I'm like okay now. And I'm, sometimes you won't get answers, and that is something that you have to learn to make peace with, and find closure on your own terms, whether that's talking about it. I had a lot of people when the TikTok series came out who were kind of like, who cares about this? Why are you still talking about this? Because in a lot of people's eyes, right, when you sign the papers and the divorce is finalized, that ends this segment of your life for them. Papers are signed. Why are we still talking about this? And I tell people, this will always be part of my story. This doesn't leave me because the papers are signed. This doesn't leave me because I've gotten into a new relationship. This is part of my story. And I will continue to talk about how it has shaped my perception of the world, my relationships moving forward, and how I interact with people. Because your story is important, as it shapes who you are and how you interact with the world. And so I always kind of just lean on, like, talking is therapeutic. getting your story out there in whatever way you have to is therapeutic in some way, shape, or form. And you are the only one that's responsible for your healing and how you heal, as long as it's not putting anybody in danger.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, that's all small
One
disclaimer.
little caveat. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, but you are the only one who can determine how you heal through something, because you are the only one who has experienced it, despite people feeling like they experienced your trauma through proxy.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah. But you're actually living it.
You're living it day in and day out. You know, when you're triggered by something that sets off a memory, negative or positive, and how you respond to that, you are the only person that has that connecting emotion, memory, feeling, thought tying to that. But again, a lot of people are very stop. Once the papers are signed, why is this relevant anymore? And so I've had a lot of people say, like, who cares about this? It's over. Move on with your life. And I have. I have moved on. But that doesn't mean that I cannot honor this chapter and speak about how this chapter has shaped who I am today and all of the amazing things that I've learned about myself because of this. It never really stops. Like, that's when people say healing is a continuum, and it's not linear, but it is a continuum. Mm-hmm. And we owe it to ourselves to keep looking back and keep reflecting on how these negative things have shaped us. I always learn something different through talking about this, and I'm always able to see how far I've come. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about talking about our trauma and talking about our pain, not to dig it all up and unearth it, but to reflect and honor a version of ourselves that no longer exists, but, was there and deserves to be honored when you're looking at it in the context of your life and how expansive life is and healing is. So,
yeah. And for every person who comments and is like, shouldn't you be over this? Because I get those comments all the time. Because people are like, why are you still talking about that? You're remarried. And I'm like, well, I talk about it because I get messages from people saying that they left their abusers because they heard my story. And that's why I talk about it, because I think that I wish that I had heard somebody describe these things in detail, because I didn't know what I was going through. Going back to what you said about being on your phone, being like, is this relationship anxiety? Is this normal to be feeling this way? I think it's so important to share our stories. That way people can recognize themselves in them, and it can help them on their healing journey. And you have been doing such a wonderful job here in San Antonio. Oh my gosh, you are like Miss Entrepreneur. Can you tell people what you're doing now? Because you started this thing that has really taken off in the last few months here.
Yes. So I started a dinner club by way of making community. I haven't gone back to LA. I was allowed to work remotely at my job. And it was the biggest blessing, because in turn I got to spend time with my family. And I started this dinner club because I came back to San Antonio, and as many people who go away for college and come back to their hometowns, you don't necessarily resonate with the group of people you went to high school with, college with, in your hometown. And I wanted to give people a space to be who they are, be vulnerable, and without any preconceived notions, or without feeling like you're in the echo chamber of talking about the things that you've experienced with people that are used to hearing your stories and tune you out over time. And so I started a dinner club called Sixth Seat, where I pair strangers. It's 5 strangers, and I'm always the host of the dinner. And we talk and we get vulnerable. We have some really cool conversation cards. We kind of highlight San Antonio's culinary scene through this. And one thing that I'm really proud of that we've been able to accomplish through this dinner club is that I am providing a sacred space for people to show up authentically. And I'm always amazed by how many people feel safe enough in this space to share parts of who they are and parts of their story without feeling like somebody's judging them for talking about something that affected them so personally, 5, 6, 7 times over. Nobody cares because it's their first time hearing it. Yeah. And my goal is to just make people feel seen, heard, felt, and understood by this process in this dinner club. We're gathering and building streamlined community and meaningful community. And I'm really proud of what we're building at Sixth Seat and the impact that it's made so far in terms of just like showing people that your people are out there and you are worth being heard.
That's amazing. Yeah. It is really cool to see this going on in the city. And I think that Yeah, I think that once you leave high school and college, and especially like once I left ministry school, it feels like you no longer have built-in friends.
Yeah.
And how do you make friends when you're an adult? It is so difficult
Hard.
unless you have like a hobby, like you go to a gym, workout class, or I don't know, like me and my sisters, we even went and did puppy yoga a bit
Yeah.
ago because we were like, maybe we'll make friends
I need
there.
to do that.
Oh, it's so fun. I'll
Okay.
send you the link. It's
Noted.
so much fun.
Please.
But yeah, I think it's like really hard to build community when you're an adult. So I love that you started this where you pair them up based on their compatibility, right? Like who you think they
Yes.
would get along with. And
Yeah.
I just love that because I think that people, I don't want to say everyone, okay, some people don't like vulnerable conversations, but I have found that people often are open to sharing. They just don't know that people want to listen. So
Yeah.
when you're in these communities and you're building this space where people can show up authentically and just talk about whatever they want to talk about, it's really cool. And I feel like that's really healing.
It really is. And I think, it's cool because we layer in funny stuff. So it's not like, therapy at the dinner table
Trauma.
with
No.
strangers, right? Like, cue the therapy session. But it is, we layer in fun and we layer
Totally.
in vulnerability and we layer in nostalgia in our experiences to create this just really beautiful experience. And, we are turning it into a docu-series and, have filmed our
Cool.
first episode. And it's been awesome just to show people that community building isn't lost. Meaningful conversation isn't lost. In our day to day, we're so wrapped up in the phones and the devices and the screens and the work and all these things. And I just want to serve that or let this serve as a reminder that like true community building still does exist when done with care and integrity intact. And so as a host and a founder of Six Seat, I just really hope to maintain the core of who we are. And that's to just build community, talk about things that are important to our community, uplift people and amplify voices within San Antonio. I think it's beautiful as the city grows and just to be able to connect people to other people who have similar shared interests, professions, walks of life. It's with great power comes great responsibility. And, I love this community that I'm building. So grateful always.
That's awesome. Well, where can people find you and where can they find Six Seat?
You can find me on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok at jade.nyasia, Nyasa. Or you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Sixth Seat. That's XIXTH.seat. If you're in San Antonio, we'd love to have you. And if you're not in San Antonio, our docuseries will be going live on YouTube on October 5th.
Oh my gosh, that's so
Yes,
soon. That's
so
exciting.
so exciting. We have so many amazing things. We wanted to film the docu-series to just bring the Six Seat experience to people, no matter where you are. Everybody, I want people to feel what we're doing here. And our first episode is called The Table Remembers, where we talk about how culture and socioeconomic status change the way we eat and shape our palates. It's a really dynamic conversation with people from all walks of life, which I think is really cool, but it shifts your perspective and how you think about our privilege when it comes down to food and how we eat. And it's just really awesome. I think when you get people together and we start presenting topics, it's just so cool. So I encourage everybody to tune in.
Yes, that's so
It's
exciting.
awesome.
Well,
Yeah.
I will link all of your stuff in the show notes. That way people can find you easily. But thank you so much for coming on. This is such a crazy story. It's hard to, like, you amaze me for how you have walked this out so gracefully and like with such humanity. Like, I appreciate that so many times you were saying, this is from my perspective. I can't speak for how they're feeling, and I'm not saying that I was always perfect or anything like that. Like, you've given so much grace in such a honestly horrible situation. I feel I cannot imagine not having that closure that I feel like a lot of us wish we could have at the ends of these sorts of situations. And you've just done such an amazing job healing from this and building a life for yourself here in San Antonio. So thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, so welcome. And thank you for having me. It's just been such an honor to be on this podcast and speak with you about this. You're, again, doing amazing things and just super grateful for you amplifying the voices of people around you. So kudos.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And if you guys could please leave a review, that would make me so happy if you could leave a review. And then also, I don't know if you guys know, but I have a second podcast with Mackenzie, and she had married my brother. They're no longer married, but we have an advice column podcast. So if you guys ever want advice, I share the link frequently on my stories, and if you guys could go check that out, that would be awesome. But I will see you guys next week for another episode of Heelish.